Good evening, everyone. We are all here. I love it. Welcome to Mindset Mastery, Unstoppable Mindset. My name is Suzanne Hart, and our topic tonight is what is the impact of Black History Month? It is the Black History Month, and given that all that's going on, my question I had to ask myself is what truly is the impact of a month dedicated to the history of a group of people? I'm wondering if it is actually enough, or does Black History Month just make us feel good about other issues that we are uncomfortable discussing? So, welcome. I'm going to tell you about my panel that's hanging out with me today. But as you jump on, please give StreamYard permission to give us your name so we can see who you are. And also let us know where you're joining us from, what you do while you're living, and who you are called to serve. Who is that divine client? Also, please do bless a life. Go pick up a friend, share it with a friend, and say, hey, there is going to be an amazing conversation happening here this evening. The other thing I'm going to ask you to do is to get into the conversation, comment, ask questions, let us know what's on your mind as we engage in this conversation. If you're listening to the replay, #replay, and also don't forget to let us know who you are, who you're called to serve, and where you're joining us from. Then also bless a life when you love what you hear, and I know that you will. So I see we've got some people beginning to join us, so welcome. I know we're on a few different platforms, so it's going to take a moment. But as you come on in, and as you're joining, as those are watching, as people come in, just tell them, hey, welcome, nice to see you. Join the conversation. Let's keep the engagement really high. So let's get this rocking and rolling. Welcome to Unstoppable Mindset. My name is Suzanne Hart. The topic tonight is what is the impact of Black History Month? What I want to know is does focusing on the history of a group of people for 1 month, does it truly make a difference? Or does it just make us feel good about issues that we may be a little uncomfortable discussing? This conversation is definitely for you if you want to have an impact in your workspace, in your community, and just in the general world. If you want to begin to get comfortable, maybe opening a dialogue. So what am I going to do? I've been hanging out. This is my friends, and we have been having some picante conversations, some poignant conversations, and some conversations that are filled with passion, and they're totally on purpose. So let me introduce who's hanging out with me today. Well, of course, I'm going to start with down to the bottom. That's where she is on my right-hand side. Beautiful Anila Nichols. Anila hails from Miami. Anila's going to tell you a little bit more about where else she comes from, where she originally came from in a few moments. Anila is a cultural competency and diversity trainer. So we got an expert in the house.
Nice.
Then we're gonna go over and we're gonna hang out with the Decker team. This is Ken and Yetta Decker, double Decker. These are my good friends. And why I wanted to have them join is that during the past few months, we have had some honest, heartfelt, let's pick each other's brains conversations about what we saw going on in the world. You all know my girl, Tria Hodge, social media strategist, right? And of course, I am Suzanne Hart. So welcome everyone. How you guys doing?
Great.
I have been so looking forward to this conversation, and I want to create the context, the environment for it. Because what I love about each and every one of you is I can have honest, difficult, truthful conversations about what I'm seeing. And I think we have a nice foundation of relationship that we're able to be honest and speak into each other and challenge each other in a very special way. And so I wanted to bring this to everyone that was listening, because I think when it comes to issues of race, culture, ethnicity, diversity, power, privilege, people tend to tiptoe around each other. And we haven't been tiptoeing. We've been asking each other some great questions and letting each other know what's on our heart and letting each other know how we feel. So to just put everything in context, so everybody kind of knows the diversity on the panel, I want everybody to tell us where they're originally from and where they presently live, just so we can get the cultural context to which we're engaging in this conversation. So I'm going to start with beautiful Anila. So go ahead, my dear.
Well, Suzanne, thank you so much for having me here today. I feel very privileged to be in the company of all of you. I originate from Albania. I grew up in the capital city of Albania. I grew up in Tirana, and later on, after my formative years, which took place in Albania, I moved to America, and actually Cleveland, Ohio. After a period of almost 2 decades of my life in Cleveland, I decided to move to Miami, Florida. And so the last 3 years I've been living here and learning so much more about the culture in Miami, which, as you can imagine, is very international.
Yeah, it is, for sure, for sure. Thank you. Kenyatta.
Well, I have been born and raised within like 5 hours of where I live now. So not much to speak of, although I was made in Denmark, but I was born in Toronto. So I'm the one that doesn't have a lot of cultural diversity as far as my history goes.
Love it. Thank you.
Yeah. And he was made in Denmark, and I was born in Denmark.
Oh.
So we immigrated when I was a kid to Canada, and we met in high school. So we've been kicking around together ever since. And we now live in Ottawa pretty much our whole married life, which is just about 39 years.
Wow.
Right. So yeah, Denmark, know the feeling of being an immigrant. Although I look like the other kids, I didn't sound like the other kids.
Awesome. And that is so such an important piece, because I think both for you and Anila, you both have the immigrant experience, and when people meet you, you look like you're possibly from where you live, until one, you start speaking, or you start sharing a little bit about yourself. So that's a lesson in and of itself, right? We don't know where people actually are from. And then I'm going to go up to beautiful Taria. Where are you from, hon?
Well, from St. Thomas, U.S., Virgin Islands, born and raised, and I moved to Maryland, Washington, D.C., Maryland area, to go to college back in the 1990s, and been there for probably, 25, 30 years. Now, what's so interesting with Ken and Yetta, what a lot of people probably don't know, is that the U.S. Virgin Islands was owned by Denmark before we were bought by the U.S. So a lot of Danish influence still exists here on the island. So that's pretty cool.
I love it. That is so neat. We're already integrating and mixing already. So for those of you who don't know, I'm originally from Trinidad, the international small country of Trinidad, where you can find almost everybody on the planet. You can find Asians, you can find Africans, you can find native Carib people. So it's a mix, Hispanics. So that's where I was born. We immigrated to Canada when I was 5. I grew up in the province of Quebec, la belle province de Quebec. And then I moved to Ontario, Toronto, and now I live in beautiful Thousand Islands, just a little down the road from Ken and Yetta. So that's the diversity of who we are. And I think that's really important because, you know, there's this whole thing about we tend to judge a book by its cover, don't we? And what I mean by that, we look at someone's race, we look at someone's gender, and we think we know a lot about them. And one of the first things I learned really early on is that there's so many layerings to who we are, and it's really important that we get, you know, Yetta and I were talking about being curious about each other, being willing to ask questions. So I'm going to jump into this because I want to talk about Black History Month. And so it is Black History Month. It's the whole month of February. And one of my questions as I was thinking about it and thinking about what I was going to talk about and why I was going to pull people together is, do you guys think that Black History Month actually makes an impact, a difference? Now, I know when you, Ken, and I were having the conversation, it was interesting because you guys said,
we didn't even know it was Black History Month. And what did it really mean? Like what, like when you told us, and I thought, are we supposed to learn some history, or was it something so that people of color would learn their history and where they came from, or what's the real purpose of? Because to me, every day should be History Day, so to speak.
I love it. I love it.
And I think it's interesting because I was more familiar with it because I'd spoken to many of my friends about it, and we've been watching different things around the world that were talking about Let's Grow and Black History Month. And I knew a gal that had actually been part of some of the major original walk when the schools were integrated and stuff. So I'd had a fair bit of experience with it, but even living in the same house, it wasn't a conversation we were having.
Mm-hmm.
And to say, I don't know what it is, and I'm going, what are you saying? I know what it is. I'm having the conversations, and clearly not enough that I was having them with my own partner.
It's interesting. And how about you, Anila? I'm going to come back to that because I want to just get a sense of where everybody is. How about you? What did you?
So I am surprised by Yetta and Ken not knowing about the History Month. And I say that in a very good way, not in a judgmental way or anything like that. Because, you know, as I look at Yetta and Ken, those are two lovely individuals that apparently have forged and nurtured relationships with people from other cultures. And so having them not know about it, imagine the number of people that don't know about the Black History Month. So having looked at it in that way, I think the Black History Month is very important and it is impactful, but it has to be then coupled and associated with other things: trainings, intentional plannings, strategies, inclusion, all of us, you know, an array of things that we need to include to make it impactful. However, the Black History Month for me has a great impact as a diversity, equity, and inclusion consultant, trainer. I believe in it, especially for organizations, because if you look at organizations, the ones that I've worked for have been in the thousands of the employees. And we would have employees to say, just like Yetta and Ken, what is Black History Month? Why is it so important? So for us, it was really important that we generated the conversation, at least to generate awareness, and then moved strategies from awareness to applying, you know, best practicing, creating pipeline programs, and all other things that we were very intentional, create resources around it. And I'm just going to share a fact today that I just read about it because I was in the curiosity about this conversation. Today marks the 45th annual of the national celebration of the Black History Month in the United States. And that itself, only 45 years. And when we know the history is so much more, it's in the centuries. but at least the last 45 years, we've decided to honor it and celebrate it.
So this is good because I have an interesting opinion, but I want to hear. So Tria, what do you think?
Very interesting. No, can you, I hope you could hear me, because growing up in the Caribbean and growing up in the islands, right? Black history, American history, European history, we were all made to learn, all types of history. And it was something that was built into our curriculum. Now, Black History Month in February for us is like literally a month of celebration, but like we live Black history here is very much ingrained, in our culture. So it's things that we know of, every day. We have heroes that we celebrate, from, the motherland, as we call it. We celebrate our history, as Caribbean people and our heritage and where we came from. So it was very surprising to me when I moved, to like the DC, Maryland area, how a lot of African Americans did not know, about their history. Because this is something, like I said, it's ingrained in our curriculum in school. We were made to learn it, recite poems, and just know it. So that was like a huge shift for me. Like when I moved, like, oh, wow, that's really a big missing, on the mainland.
It's interesting to listen to all three different perspectives. And I know for myself, Black History Month for me was a celebration of my own awareness. And it was an opportunity to learn more about my own history. And having been raised in Canada, where history was, they were a slave. That was the line in the history book, and that was it. And I remember being in class and actually shrinking and going, "There's got to be more." And so for me, it was Black History Month was an exploration and a celebration and a getting to know of my own culture and my own history and more about people who looked like me. But unfortunately, it didn't really happen until I got into my 20s in terms of the exposure. But this is the interesting thing. When I go to most Black history events, I either see a lot of people who look like me, or a lot of people who've been brought because they're friends of people who look like me. Right? And I think that is such a key piece. And the only other place I saw the melting was where Anila was talking about, when institutions implemented in their own walls, then it became part of the organization culture. And for some people, a have to do, some people a must do, some people a choose to do, but it became that, as Anila said, that place of exposure. And so the question I'm left with is there a need for curiosity of difference for this to have meaning?
As we say, at least in the field of diversity and inclusion, is in order for you to be this culturally competent individual, somebody that is not only aware and tolerant of others' differences, but also celebrates them, you need to have compassionate curiosity. That's where it comes from, a place of compassion. You are curious about others. You want to learn more about them, where they come from, what are their customs, what are their traditions, but you do it with compassion.
So compassionate curiosity.
Mm-hmm.
I like that. And this is where like Diane Smith is out, and I seen her post, and she says Black History Month is an apologetic assertion of who I am as a human being. I need it like air, right? It resonates in my bones and enables me to acknowledge the sacrifice, the dreams, and the depth of my ancestors' contribution to this world and my rightful place in it. And I will echo that in terms of what my history did for me, learning my history. I tell people learning my history, Diane, made me 10 feet tall and bulletproof. And the absence of it was like an empty shell, right? In certain areas, like I had knowledge, I had information, I had education, but I didn't have, there was a piece of me missing, if you will. But this is where I would really love to spend some time, is that I love the part about compassionate curiosity. I love the whole piece around interest. And I think why Ken and Yetta and I and Anila and I and Tree and I think that the reason we've had these great conversations is you guys sit in the place of compassionate curiosity with your friend Suzanne. And so I remember in months when it felt like the world was losing their mind for moments, and I came to your house, you guys didn't skirt the issue. Although we were just getting to know each other, you guys sat in this place of absolute compassionate curiosity, and we opened up conversation. Can you talk a little bit about that piece for everyone listening?
Sure. I think for us, it's been as we just lean into wanting to know another, regardless of whether we look alike or we don't look alike, we're really a lot more similar than we are different. So I think sometimes finding the commonality has been fun. That's where we started. We started with, hey, we're both immigrant kids. We both immigrated about the same age. And we were both rejected in our schools for different reasons. I couldn't understand the language, and Suzanne had too heavy an accent. I had one of those too. It just went away over the course of decades. And so I think first finding the commonality actually gave us a place to look at the differences with complete compassionate curiosity. So it wasn't so much, hey, you don't look like me, you don't feel like me. In fact, we thought, well, we actually are alike. We're actually kind of like sisters. And so then it was just a really neat place to look at what are the differences from. And I found that whether I was in Africa or whether I've traveled the world, I mean, it sounds like we haven't kind of left our hometown, but we really have left. We've been a lot of places. We just didn't get caught up in the political side of the conversations. In Canada, there's only been Black History Month for just over 25 years. Like it's not 45. And it started out as a week. It wasn't a month. And so there wasn't a lot of emphasis on it in Canada either from a holiday or an acknowledgement perspective. So it just had to come from a heart of curiosity, not a sanctioned curiosity.
Oh, that was well said. So Tria, what are your thoughts? She said did you say a heart of curiosity, not
a heart of curiosity and not a sanctioned heart of curiosity.
So not a policy curiosity. Like we must do it. Thoughts, Tria?
Yeah, I'm sitting here and I love the expression. I'm thinking, and it's making me go back, to having, the curiosity about it. And one of the things that, I share all the time is that my dad was an educator. Okay. And one of the things that he made sure that we did, and we as in his kids, okay, was know everything. So it wasn't just, or seek to learn, more than just what's in front of you. So even though you might go to school and they have the curriculum that they'll teach about Black history, Daddy always made sure that we had books, to read about African history, world history, European history, and I got a broader perspective of really history, like how things transpire, how everything we all had, how the roles were played out over time. Okay, and I think that was the importance for me, and not just having a segment or a piece of history that's given in a textbook because it needs to be in a curriculum, and then that's all. And so it's having the broader conversation, and being open to that. And like I said, one of the things that's really interesting and unique about growing up inside of the Caribbean, we understand that we were brought to the Caribbean, well, not everyone, right? Some of us got here before the slave ships, right? But but brought here, but as a people we still had more liberty, more freedom, to be expressive and hold on to our culture. And so even when people ask about my name, oh, that's a very interesting name, where did your name come from? Even to our pets that we have, their names have meaning, because that was important to my dad, as an educator. And what that did for me as a person growing up, it just brought a different understanding. Like, first of all, we're all people, number one. Okay, that's it. We're all people, number one. And then we get a chance to just understand more how, once again, events happen and the roles that each culture, or each race played in the entire story. Okay, and just having that understanding and that backdrop.
And,
so I love curiosity.
And I think this compassionate curiosity, someone needs to put that in the comment section. Compassionate curiosity and not sanctioned. What was it, Leetta? Not what curiosity? Not sanctioned, not policy curiosity, like have to, but just us having a heart of curiosity. And it was during my conversation, I think, with Ken. And actually it was Ken and Yetta, and you guys when you talked about not knowing about Black History Month, and I had to sit and go, okay, so what do I actually know about other histories? Because this was the thing, right? That because we all are exposed to what our education and our environment exposes us to. Let's just be real. And so the question I had to ask myself was, what do I truly know about other histories and the histories of other groups? And I had to say, not much. I don't go seeking it out. But this is what was the distinction for me. And I'm going back to Yetta's point. And I realize that I get exposed to history by my exposure and my curiosity of other people. Right? So it's not that I go seeking history for history's sake. I end up seeking out history. Like in my collaboration with Anila, I'm learning a lot about her history. Did I know anything before I met Anila? No, not really. I'm learning about Yetta and Ken's history as I get to know them. Did I know anything about them, that history prior to? No. So part of me had to get really honest about this conversation and my expectations. And I think Black History Month is a huge celebration for me. It's a celebration of my history. And I invite people that I have a curiosity and a relationship into journey with me as I expose myself through my history. But I really have to get present to my willingness to know your history with my willingness to know you.
I think that's a two-edged sword. I think that as you have that curiosity, that openness to have a relationship with someone who maybe doesn't look the same as you, or speaks a different language, or has a weird accent, or whatever the differences are, when you build a relationship and you're connected, at that point, you have the opportunity to have candor. And the level of relationship allows an increase in the level of candor. And that's when you can find out about people's hurts and their history and their, really what's going on for them, and how maybe I've been part of that pain or that hurt, right? And or my culture's been part of that. Now, maybe I didn't do it personally, but what things have been passed on from generation to generation that are modeled by our parents, like this stuff about being racist or against a certain culture or whatever. generally it's passed down from generation to generation. You put 2 or 3 kids of different cultures together in a room, they're going to sit down and play and love each other.
Yeah. Until an adult gets involved. And then they're like, conditioning begins. That is such a great point. And I think one of the reasons I wanted to have this conversation was that, I think sometimes, I love what you said, Yetta, about the policy of things. And I think sometimes we look to policy to affect change. We look to systems, to government to say, well, they need to have more this and more that and more this, and not really taking responsibility for, are we willing to cross cultural and racial lines? Are we willing to break bread with someone who doesn't look like us? How many friends do you have? Not colleagues, not peers, but friends that you have that don't look like you. Like, I spend weekends at Ken and Yetta's home. It feels like home when I get there, because we have spent time developing a safety in that relationship. But I think the safety also comes from our willingness to explore what sometimes feels unsafe.
Yeah, I appreciate that, Suzanne. And as you say what feels unsafe, what keeps running through my head, and I kind of feel like I have to say it, is when I was a kid and we immigrated, the only focus my parents had, very unlike Taria's family, was how do you get integrated into this culture? How do you learn the language? How do you figure out how to not fail school? How do you figure out how to navigate the neighborhood? How do you figure out, my parents, for the many years, we wanted to go to this beautiful restaurant. We'd be driving down Toronto and they'd say, we need to go, can't wait till we have enough money to go to that restaurant, that kind of restaurant, that one there. And we would talk about it a lot as I reflect as a little kid. It was a funeral home. They didn't know the language well enough that they thought the funeral home looked like a fancy restaurant that they would have seen in Denmark. And so here we are dying to go to literally go to this restaurant that is no restaurant at all. And so there was this sense of integration, kind of a bizarre example, but there was that as a whole way of being in our family. So if anything, my parents wanted us to integrate into the community, but it had to be what they perceived as Canadian culture.
This is good. That is good. What are your thoughts on that one, Anila?
I would like to answer it by sharing my own example. When people look at me, they think I'm American. But as soon as I start speaking, that my accent gives me away. So my name for myself in the field of training is the invisible immigrant. I am the invisible immigrant. What helped me come to America is the culture I grew up was very inclusive. We celebrated people of other cultures. So with that in mind, I jumped on the plane and I landed in America. One of the lessons that I teach during the training is I tell the participants, you have to learn about another culture, at least about another culture. You have to try to learn another language. Doesn't matter how proficient you get into that language, just try it. And become friends with people from other cultures. And I lay out the cultures, Black, Asian, Indian, all these cultures, all these beautiful, beautiful people from around the world. And so this is their homework. They need to sit down and evaluate themselves and see what kind of demographics, what are the people that they mostly accompany themselves with? What are their conversations? Are there neighborhood conversations? Are they local? Are they national? Are they global? How much do they know that our society is changing very fast. In 2050, America is going to look completely different.
Absolutely.
Completely different. So here I am, someone coming from a very small country, but the values that I had growing up really supported me during my transition in America. And my compassionate curiosity about other cultures actually helped me tremendously, because I didn't know anything about America. I had never left my country. And in addition to it, no one else in my community knew anything about America. I, as a 24-year-old, had to find them jobs, take them to the doctor, go to Social Security offices, find out how do you get health insurance. So all of a sudden, I had to wear so many hats. But if I hadn't been this, by bringing, my upbringing, being such a well-rounded person that I would blend in and go about my way to really reaching out to people from other cultures and asking for help and asking for guidance, I don't think I would have been the person that I am. And actually, I didn't start my job in diversity and training until 15 years later. I was actually asked to join that field. And initially, I went to a lead diversity program through the Northeast Diversity Center of Cleveland, Ohio. That's where I first learned about the history of the Black community. And it broke my heart. I've gone to places and I've seen things that were a representation of the past history of the Black community in America, and it broke my heart. Also through my friendships, one of my friends who was master of ceremonies for a diversity and inclusion event for the Black Month history, that's why I love Black Month history, he took me along as his guest as the Cleveland Museum of Art was showing a documentary about the events in Tulsa, Oklahoma. I would have never, ever been exposed to that if it weren't for my friendships, if it weren't for my compassion, curiosity. And in addition to it, I don't stereotype people. I don't make assumptions about people. I don't place my bias on people. When I go into a situation, when I go into a relationship, I shed all these layers of the isms, and I just want to get to know people for who they are.
Wow. That was a mouthful. That was powerful. Thank you. That was powerful. And I think the thing I'm taking away, and this is going to be another conversation, because we're going to be having this conversation all month. And one of my questions is because I want to just be provocative this month, is can we shed bias? Can we shed stereotypes? Can we truly shed them? I'm not sure, but I think I can be aware of it. So we're gonna dive into that on another conversation. So definitely stay tuned. But I think the theme here is, I love the compassionate curiosity, the willingness to learn, and the willingness to connect. And I think why part of the reason this conversation was so important for me was that even as I watched what was happening throughout the year, and anyone can respond to this, I still saw, what frustrated me was I still saw the silos, right? The us and them silos, the group silos. And although there was an integration and there was an outcry and marches and so on and so forth, there was still these silos. And I really wanted to say, it's one thing for us to get out and march, but what do we do when the marching is over? What do we do when the protests are over? Are we willing to cross over the boundaries and go sit in each other's living rooms and have conversations? Because I love Black History Month. It's a celebration of my history, and I've been into it. Like, right now I'm reading Black Theology, Black Power, one of my favorite books, rereading it just for this month. And I'm having conversations that I hope are provocative and useful. And it's a celebration. But beyond the celebration of the different months and the different things, are we willing to cross lines? that's really what I'm asking, because it's beyond a month. And also it's beyond a month. If I take the information and I don't go have a conversation with it, if I don't go unpack it, if I don't go do anything with it, whatever I'm exposed to in that month, where does it really go? That's what I'm dropping in the middle. Whoever wants to take it.
I'll jump in and I'll share something. So as I'm sitting here and I'm listening, um, and I'm going back to Ken talking about laying down all the racism and all the isms. For me, it's really interesting because I did not experience racism until I got, to the United States. Okay. And so being here, growing up in the Caribbean, we have white people here, right? Most of them sound like us, right? They have an accent too. So there wasn't really like a big difference. Now, I've read, about all of the atrocities of slavery, and I mean, stuff happened here, but it wasn't like a lived, experience in my time here in the Virgin Islands. And then when I moved, then it's like I really saw it, first and foremost, like, oh, wow, it's really a thing. And then I also saw how other African Americans, right, even though I'm African American too, I am American, U.S. territory, would treat, other, people from the Caribbean different. And still, there's that understanding. And going back to you, Suzanne, what you just said, I think this past year, 2020, has caused me to really go deeper. Because I have to admit, it isn't something like I carried on me, like every day, like focusing on it. But 2020 has exposed so much that even for myself, I started to look at why are things the way they are, right? And it goes back, and the thing that came out to me on all parties is belief systems, right? Like, what is it that people truly believe? Okay. And that's the thing about it, is like your beliefs could be, environmental, cultural, spiritual. Your beliefs could be formed from so many different places. And so it's to have the dialogue as to why people believe what they believe, and challenge people to take a look at the belief systems, right? And I think that that's some of the most interesting conversations that I've had in 2020, because it doesn't matter like black, white, where you're from. We all have beliefs, and we all have, like you and I, Susan, we talk all the time. We all have these biases, right? So where do they come from? And are you willing, to honestly sit back and have that conversation and have the dialogue, with friends about the biases that we all have?
Yeah, absolutely. And I think you're hitting so key. When everything was unfolding in 2020, I had a mixed emotions. Like it was there was so much. And I was in conversations with so many people because I needed to be self-expressed around this. I needed to do something. And for me, when I need to do something, I get in communication. So I got in communication with Ken and Yetta. I got in communication with Anila. I got in communication with Cindy, who's watching, who's my best friend, blonde hair, green eyes. We're gonna have a whole other conversation there, in a few weeks. I got in conversation, and for me, what it was getting in a conversation that really just had us begin to look at who we are and what we believe and what our biases are. And so one of the reasons I'm doing this was, and I called friends. I remember calling Ken and Yetta. I remember calling Anila and saying, okay, 2021, I'm going to take personal responsibility for keeping this conversation going, partly because just because we have a changing of the guard, so to speak, doesn't mean the conversation goes away, because it's not one person responsible for crazy right now, right? And I think part of my wanting for everyone is this place of sitting in personal responsibility for change, and saying, I'm going to do my part in this conversation. And I'm not talking about a black-white conversation. I'm not talking about men-women conversation. I'm talking about the conversation that has us oppressed, not like, marginalized, stereotyped, hurt, abuse, disrespect each other on all grounds. And this was the month I decided to start, because our focus is on a group of people that have experienced all of that. And it's a great example in terms of what can happen, but it's still happening in subtle ways, and we are required to be the change. And so what I love about each and every one of you is when I said, I'm going to do this, no one said, oh gosh. Everybody was like, what do we need to do? How can we support you? What do you need? And that's the start, right? So first of all, thank all of you. That's the start. And I think it's, Barbara said, this is good conversations to have among friends. Yes, Barbara, it is. See, I love this woman. Good conversations to have among friends. So how can we each be the change? What do you guys think?
Okay, Suzanne, I want to say this first. Thank you so very much for being so thoughtful and so deep and so brilliant. And I love the way that you are approaching, the Black Month history. You said it. You already said, let's be the change we want to see. It starts there, first of all. So we are the change we want to see. And I sit on the seat of the ally, and I will be there and support whatever you need. And I think together is where we make a difference. And you and I talk about this, locking arms and going far together. And so that applies to the bigger picture. As communities, let's lock arms together and go forward. The second piece that you said, we have to be intentional. When we speak in the field of diversity, equity, inclusion, we always say you have to be intentional. And it's not just for a month. It's not just in the February. It's not just Martin Luther King Day. It's all year round. And we create strategies, we create programs, we create trainings that are not just in paper, but those are programs, those are steps that are put into place very intentionally, and also create resources around it. You're creating the programs, but if you don't develop them, you need the resources. One of the things that I will mention that will probably, as we talk about data sort of wakes us up. The diversity, equity, and inclusion field is an $8 billion industry. Imagine that. However, some companies are really on board with diversity, equity, and inclusion. Some companies have the offices in place. So if they receive a lawsuit for discrimination or things of that nature that have to do specifically with diversity, equity, and inclusion, that in the eyes of the court, they are checking all the boxes and they look good. So we have to shift that mindset that we are not here just for the organization so that the organization looks good, but actually engage in tough conversations, be comfortable, but by being uncomfortable in those conversations, address the elephant in the room, and then move forward from there.
I love it. And I want to put another challenge in the space, because I got my diversity and race relations training, youngest trainer, long time ago. I think I was 26, 27 when I got my training. And one of the things that the trainer said when we entered the room, so you can imagine this young, sassy, militant, Black young woman walks into the room, and the trainer says, we've all been oppressed and we've all been oppressors. I thought I was in the wrong room, because I was like, do you not see me? I'm the oppressed group. And my education began from there, because truly we all have been oppressed and we all can be oppressors, and we're going to unpack that. And the reason I'm putting that on the table and in the space is when we hear diversity and race relations training, automatically there are groups that exclude themselves. And oftentimes there are groups that run for the hills because, oh my gosh, they're coming for me. And then there are groups that exclude themselves, and they're people of color because they go, that's not for me, I'm already good. And I will say to you, we've all been oppressed, and we all have the capacity to be oppressors, because there's this thing called power and privilege. So I'm going to switch the conversation a little bit, and I'm going to say this is going to be an inclusive leadership conversation that I'm going to have all month and I'm going to have all year. Inclusive leadership conversation. Why? Because the most dangerous person, in my opinion, is a leader that doesn't understand power and privilege, and a leader who has no checks and balances around their biases, their ability to stereotype, their ability to judge, their ability to do all these things. So I'm putting it at the doorstep of everybody that this is not just a cultural competency race relations conversation. If you're going to assume a leadership role, that means a parent, that's a leader, right? Someone in an organization, small, big or small, the person who has the soccer team, the ball team. If you're going to assume a leadership conversation, it is truly your responsibility to get a handle and to have an awareness of power and privilege and diversity, race, all those things. So I'm going to switch the conversation a little bit and say, let's broaden it so that it doesn't sit at one doorstep, but it sits at all our doorsteps. So thoughts?
Suzanne, can I say, can I add this quickly, because I want to let other people speak as well, my dear friends here. But to be successful in today's world, you really have to embrace diversity, no matter where you are. Mm-hmm. So you are absolutely on point, and actually a thought leader, a premier leader in understanding what the power and the privilege and all of that looks into leadership.
I love it. Thank you. I see Yetta's got, like, she's got, I got you.
I think that sometimes before, like in our company, I'll speak, one of our mottos and beliefs is that we celebrate diversity. And sometimes I think that we tolerate, not so much, I'm just saying as a society, sometimes we tolerate diversity as opposed to celebrating diversity and loving the flavor, the variety that different cultures bring, whether it be in their food or their dance or their clothing or their speech, their way of expressing love or whatever it is. All of that makes life rich. And when we try to stay by myself in my own racism or my own culture, I don't get that. I don't get that beauty.
Mm-hmm. Right. And it is, I think we are so conditioned to fear difference. We are so conditioned to, and we could go places on this, but we're limited in time, but we are conditioned to fear difference. We are conditioned to believe that there's not enough to go around, so difference is necessary. There's so many conditionings that we can unpack that contribute to what you're talking about. And I love the fact that you're kind of putting on us a notice that it is a willingness to embrace, celebrate difference that makes the world so wonderful. So thank you. Taria, what's your thoughts, hon?
Yeah, And I just want to jump in. The reason why this is so important, because even as an entrepreneur, building, my company and growing, one of the reasons why this conversation is so great is like when I look at my team is consisting of people from different cultures, like all across the world, right? And so it does take that, level of, the compassionate curiosity, and I'm learning some stuff, right? So like to have that, and I'll just share an example. Here in the US, our mentality is go, 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 go. You just got to be on all the time. And then, I have, team members, who would say, hey, look, I honor family. And family is a value to me. And so one of the things that I do with my family is we sit down and we have dinner, every day. It just so happens that their dinner time is in the middle of my day, right? And so I have to understand and honor that, because if I'm going to say that a value for me is family, then I have to honor somebody else's, value. And I have to put the company in such a way that it reflects that as well. So if you're absolutely right in what you said, it's not a sometimes, conversation, or a conversation for this group of people and that group of people, and then other, groups kind of run to the hill. Like the world is really becoming smaller. Like literally, that's how I feel. Like the world, like is literally in the palm of our hands. The only way that we are going to make it, going forward, is that we do have, that understanding and that compassion, for each other as first people.
I love it. I love it. Thank you all so much. This has been, this is Unstoppable Mindset. This has been an amazing conversation. I am sitting down with Ken and Yetta Decker, Double Decker, the Decker team. I'm sitting down with Pree Hodge, social media strategist, and Nicholas, resiliency and diversity trainer. And I'm putting this out because part of it is we're wanting to lead and be examples. These are conversations that we've been having, and we've been having them across lines, and we've been having them in the middle of difficult situations. We've been asking each other the hard questions. We've been pushing back, and you'll hear more pushback because we'll be doing another one of these. And like when we've pushed each other back and said, I don't like it when you said that. Like, I don't understand that. And so we have been having those conversations, and change can only be possible if we are curious about each other, if we are willing to have the hard conversations, if we stop tiptoeing around, as Anila said, the elephant in the room. So I am so honored to start this in the month that honors my history. But I want to honor all histories and the importance of all histories, and our willingness to get to know each other on such a different and deep level. And so I want to just honor each and every one of you for encouraging me to keep going and being willing to be a part of the first conversation, as we're all like, we don't know what we're doing, but we're doing it. So thank you. And I just want to, I know Barbara is saying this is the, Barbara, I will challenge everybody listening that if you think this is a great conversation to have among friends, have it with your friends. Invite them over and say, we're starting something new for 2021. We're going to sit down and have some great conversations. Anila, you got some thank you for sharing. Cindy saying a willingness, a willingness to lean in and connect. Lean in and connect. Dawn says, yes, a new awareness and a willingness. Dawn says, this is beautiful, right? Tria's posted being comfortable having an uncomfortable conversation, right? So with that, everyone, my name is Suzanne Hart. We have been having a fantastic conversation. This is Unstoppable Mindset. As I said, Ken and Yetta Decker, Anila Nicholas, Pree Hodge. We will be back later on this month. I will be back here 7 p.m. Eastern Standard next Thursday with a friend of mine. We're going to be talking a little bit about power and privilege, and how it shows up and what it means in this conversation of equity and marginalization and the celebration of Black history and the celebration of culture. So come back and join us. Everyone, thank you so much for just sharing this time with us. And as we go, please remember that you are all so very brilliant. You are all so very special. And the world is waiting for you to bring your unique gifts to the marketplace and to your friends and family. Take care, blessings, and we'll see you back here next week.